The first signal, the universe had always been a place of chaos, full of competing empires and races, each trying to outsmart the other. For centuries, the galaxy had known peace, but it was a fragile peace, one held together by fear, power, and respect. The most powerful empires ruled with a firm grip, and the rest of the galaxy trembled in their shadow. Life in the stars was predictable until one day everything changed. It began as a faint signal. At first it was just a whisper, a crackling noise on the edge of the Galactic communication network. Scientists at the Intergalactic Research Institute, in the heart of the galaxy's capital, listened carefully, puzzled by the sound. They had never heard anything like it before. The signal was not in any known language, not in any format they recognized. It wasn't random, though. It was purposeful, deliberate, and it was growing stronger. Over the next few hours, the signal became clearer, more defined. It pulsed with a steady rhythm, like a heartbeat echoing through the stars. It was a message. But from who? And from where? The message was simple, just a single word, repeated over and over: humanity. The scientists scrambled to analyze the source. They sent every probe, every ship in the area, to trace the signal, but nothing could get close enough. The signal didn't seem to be coming from a planet or a known ship. It seemed to be coming from deep space, somewhere far beyond their reach. Still, the word it carried sent a chill down their spines. Humanity, they whispered, their voices filled with confusion. The galaxy had known many species. They knew the powerful Sora, the intelligent Velians, and the ancient Dragtul. But humanity was different. Humanity was a mystery. No one knew exactly where they came from. No one had ever encountered them, not until now. As the signal spread across the galaxy, it did something no one expected. It caused a ripple effect, an undercurrent of unease. Every species that heard it began to feel a strange sensation, as if something was approaching, something that would change everything. The Galactic Council convened in an emergency session. Representatives from every empire gathered, their faces filled with worry. What was this signal? Was it a threat? Was it a warning? Or something else? On the outer rim of the galaxy, far from the Council's reach, a small group of explorers aboard the Vanguard ship picked up the signal. They had been exploring the unknown parts of space, far from the paths usually taken by civilized worlds. As the crew listened to the strange message, they knew they had to investigate. The captain, a seasoned explorer named Jace Arden, had never heard anything like this in his years of deep space travel. "Prepare to set course toward the source of the signal," Captain Arden ordered, his voice calm but with a hint of excitement. His crew knew this was unlike any mission they had ever undertaken. The crew worked quickly, adjusting their ship's course. As they approached the origin of the signal, they were stunned by what they saw. It wasn't just a signal anymore. The source appeared to be a massive, enormous structure, an object so large that it could only be described as something alien. The Vanguard crew was speechless as they stared at the object. Suspended in the void of space, "We found it," Arden said, his voice barely a whisper. The ship's sensors picked up strange readings, some of them beyond their understanding. This wasn't just some drifting piece of debris. It was a craft, a ship, far beyond anything humanity could have built. The crew moved cautiously, sending out drones to gather data. But the moment they did, the ship came alive. A light flashed from the structure, brighter than 1,000 suns. It was as if the ship itself had awoken from a deep slumber. The signal pulsed one final time, this time stronger than ever before. The word humanity echoed through the void, louder, more urgent than, without warning. The ship's massive engines roared to life, and it began moving. It was heading straight toward the center of the galaxy. The Vanguard ship's crew scrambled to analyze the ship's trajectory. It was clear now that this wasn't just an accidental discovery. Humanity's message had been heard. And whatever it was that had just awoken, it was headed straight for the heart of the galaxy to ward the most. Powerful empires in existence, the universe was on the brink of something enormous, something no one could predict. As the news of the signal spread, panic began to set in. What did humanity want? Why had they sent the signal? And what would happen when they arrived? The galaxy was no longer peaceful. It was no longer certain. Humanity's arrival had begun, and with it, the fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. Asterisk, the fleet appears as the mysterious ship headed toward the center of the galaxy. The news of its movement spread quickly. Every species across the stars was watching, waiting, and preparing. The galaxy had never seen anything like this before, an unknown race. A powerful force moving toward them with unwavering purpose. There was no time to waste. And the galaxy's most powerful empires began to make their moves. The Sora Empire, known for their ruthless efficiency in battle, sent their fleets into high alert. Their massive warships, equipped with weapons that could tear apart entire planets, were deployed, ready to defend their borders at all costs. The Velians, the intellectuals of the galaxy, raced to their laboratories, hoping their advanced technology could help them understand the nature of the approaching ship. And the Draktil, the oldest and most mysterious species, prepared their strongest warriors for what was to come. But despite their preparations, no one knew how to stop the approaching force. No one knew what it was or who was behind it. One thing was certain: humanity had just made its presence known to the galaxy. It was impossible to ignore. As the Vanguard ship followed the mysterious craft, they made a startling discovery. The ship wasn't alone. It was only the first of many. One by one, other ships began to appear, emerging from the depths of space like shadows. Massive, imposing, and sleek, each one had the same unmistakable design. The ships were human-made, and their numbers were growing by the minute. The galaxy watched in awe as more and more vessels appeared, each one more advanced and more terrifying than the last. Captain Jace Arden watched through the viewport of the Vanguard, his heart racing. He had seen many things in his career, but this was unlike anything he had ever encountered. The fleet was vast, stretching across the stars, and it showed no signs of slowing down. "These aren't just ships," Arden said, his voice barely audible. "This is an invasion." The crew of the Vanguard scrambled to make sense of what they were witnessing. They had never seen ships like these before. The human-made vessels were far more advanced than anything they had in their arsenal. The ship's engines glowed with a power that seemed to defy the laws of physics. The sleek designs, built for both speed and firepower, were an ominous sign that humanity was not to be underestimated. The galaxy was in shock. The ships were not just entering galactic space, they were moving towards the heart of the galaxy, toward the capital planets of the most powerful empires. No one knew if they were preparing for war, or if this was simply the beginning of something even more dangerous. The Sora Empire quickly formed a united front with the Velians and Draktil, sending their best fleets to meet the threat head-on. A new alliance was born, formed out of fear and necessity. But it was clear that even with their combined strength, they had no idea how to fight what was coming. For days, the fleet moved through space, gathering more ships as they went. Each new vessel added to their overwhelming numbers. They moved with precision, every ship in perfect formation, as if they had practiced this moment for years. The galaxy trembled under the weight of their presence. No one dared to challenge them. Humanity had arrived, and they were not asking for permission. Back on the capital planets, panic began to set in. The news was everywhere. Every species in the galaxy, from the smallest of the peaceful Althori to the mightiest of the war-hardened Sora, had heard the stories. Humanity's fleet was unstoppable. Every attempt to intercept them had failed. Every attempt to understand their motives had come up empty. The galaxy was left with only one question: what did humanity want? As the days passed, a sense of dread filled the air. It wasn't just the ships that were terrifying. It was the idea that humanity wasn't afraid of anyone. They didn't fear the galaxy's most powerful empires. They didn't fear war. They didn't fear the consequences of their actions. Humanity had arrived. They were not going to stop. Captain Arden sat in his command chair, his hands clenched tightly. He knew what was coming. He could feel it in his bones. The moment the fleets reached the heart of the galaxy, the moment they arrived at the galactic capital, everything would change. He just didn't know how. The fleets drew closer, and the galaxy held its breath. Would the great powers of the galaxy rise to meet the threat? Or would they crumble beneath the might of humanity's unstoppable force? Only time would tell. Asterisk. The human strategy of the galaxy was on edge, its leaders uncertain of how to handle the growing threat. The powerful fleets of humanity, now numbering in the hundreds, had made their way toward the galactic capital.
Ow.
They showed no signs of slowing down, and the combined forces of the galaxy's greatest empires had been unable to halt their advance. The once unstoppable warships of the Sora Empire had faltered. The Velians, with all their advanced intelligence, were powerless against the sheer scale and might of humanity's forces. Deathworlders, ancient as they were, had no idea how to face the human threat. As humanity's fleets approached the capital, the galaxy's leaders realized that they could not simply rely on their military might. It was clear that humanity had come with a purpose far greater than just a show of force. They had come to conquer, but they were doing so with a level of calm, calculated strategy that had left the galaxy's greatest minds scrambling to figure out their next move. But amidst the growing panic, something unexpected happened. Humanity stopped. The fleets halted, and for the first time since their arrival, the galaxy got a glimpse of what was to come. The signal, the same mysterious message that had sent. Shockwaves across the universe began to pulse again, but this time, there was something different. It wasn't just a word anymore. The message had evolved. Humanity has come. The message echoed through every channel, through every communication device across the galaxy. But now, there was a new word that followed it. Choose. The leaders of the galaxy were stunned. No one knew what it meant, but they knew one thing for certain. It wasn't a request. Humanity was offering them a choice, a decision that could either save or doom them all. The Sora Empire's supreme commander, Tsar Vek, sat in his war room, his fingers trembling as he processed the message. Choose. What could that possibly mean? He muttered. The Velian ambassador Shalani stared at the hologram projection of the human fleet, her mind racing. They want us to decide, she said softly. But decide what? Across the galaxy, military leaders, politicians, and diplomats all grappled with the same question. What could humanity want? Was it some kind of trap, a psychological game, or was it an invitation to negotiate? It was impossible to know for sure. In the midst of this uncertainty, Captain Jace Arden, still aboard the Vanguard, began to understand something about humanity's tactics. As a seasoned explorer, he knew the value of patience. The human fleets weren't making rash moves. They weren't just sending a message. They were waiting for the galaxy to react. Humanity didn't need to fight for control of the galaxy. They had the power to crush it, but they weren't interested in mindless destruction. No, humanity wanted something deeper. They wanted to test the galaxy's resolve. And the galaxy, as it turned out, was about to fail that test. As the days went by, the galaxy's leaders couldn't agree on how to respond. Some called for immediate surrender, believing that humanity's fleets were too powerful to oppose. Others argued that they could still fight, that the ancient powers of the galaxy could still win. The debate raged, but in the end, the decision came down to one final tragic choice. The galaxy did nothing. They couldn't come to an agreement. The leaders of the Sora, Velians, and Drakdol all stood divided. Some of them wanted to fight, others wanted to negotiate, and still others were paralyzed by fear. The choice humanity had offered was left hanging in the air, unanswered, ignored. Humanity had seen enough. The fleets of humanity moved forward, their engines powering up once again. The message choose had faded into nothingness, replaced by a single word that sent chills through the entire galaxy. Action. Human fleets surged forward, and this time, they were not waiting. They were not going to give the galaxy any more time to decide. Their ships tore through space with purpose, their movements precise, coordinated. No longer was this a test, it was a demonstration of what humanity was capable of. Within moments, humanity's lead ship, the Eclipse, launched a devastating wave of energy that tore through a nearby Sora battalion. The battle began with an explosion that could be seen across the stars, and the warships of the Sora Empire were obliterated in an instant. In the aftermath, humanity didn't pause to celebrate. They simply moved on, pushing forward, unstoppable. The galaxy watched in horror as the human fleets continued their march, their dominance undeniable. Which new wave of destruction left the galaxy's once proud empires in ruins. No longer could they hide behind their ancient treaties or their vaunted alliances. Humanity had brought a new kind of war, a war fought with brutal efficiency and calculated precision. On the capital planet, the leaders of the galaxy could do nothing but watch as their worst fears unfolded before them. The time for words was over. Humanity had made its move, and the galaxy had failed to act in time. Asterisk, the resistance forms the galaxy was no longer the same. The once mighty empires of the Sora, Velians, and Drakdil, which had ruled over the stars for millennia, were now reeling from humanity's brutal display of power. In a matter of days, entire fleets were lost, and entire systems fell silent. The universe, which had been at the top of the food chain for centuries, now faced the undeniable truth: humanity was no longer a myth, no longer a mystery. They were here, and they were unstoppable. Yet, amidst the growing chaos, a whisper of hope began to emerge. A small faction, made up of warriors, diplomats, and military tacticians from different corners of the galaxy, began to form a resistance. They called themselves the Defenders of the Stars. They were a ragtag group, made up of rebels from every species, each with their own reasons for fighting. Some had lost family, some had lost entire worlds, and some simply refused to kneel to an unknown power that sought to dominate the galaxy. Their leader, a former Sora military commander named Zara Vek, had witnessed firsthand the destruction caused by humanity's fleets. She had seen the way humanity's warships cut through Sora vessels like they were paper. The devastation that followed each assault. Zara knew that the galaxy had no choice but to unite and fight back, or else they would lose everything. But she also knew that fighting humanity head-on was a fool's game. Their power was too great, their tactics too refined. As Zara gathered her forces, the galaxy's leaders watched in disbelief. The galaxy was at war, but the war was not what they had expected. It wasn't a war between empires. It was a war for survival. The Defenders of the Stars were their last hope, a fragile alliance of species, fighting against a force far greater than anything they had ever known. "Humanity does not fight like us," Zara said, addressing the first meeting of the resistance. "They don't rely on brute strength alone. They rely on precision, on strategy. If we are to have any chance of victory, we must learn their methods, understand their tactics." But the defenders had no time to learn. Humanity's fleet was already on the move again. They had obliterated the Sora's largest shipyards, destroyed Velian research stations, and taken control of the Drakdil capital. Now, they were headed straight for the heart of the galaxy, where the last remaining powerful empires stood ready to make their final stand. Zara and her growing resistance knew that they could not allow humanity to reach the galactic capital. If they did, it would be the end. It would be the moment the galaxy fell completely under humanity's control. Desperation hung in the air, like a thick fog as they prepared for their first major counterattack. But even as they gathered their forces, a realization began to set, and humanity had already won the psychological battle. Every time they moved, every time they attacked, they left fear in their wake. It wasn't just the destruction of fleets or the loss of systems, it was the fear of the unknown. What did humanity want? Why were they doing this? What would be left once they had everything? The galaxy's greatest minds were still no closer to answering these questions. As the day of the first battle between the resistance and humanity's fleet drew near, Zara Vex stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Starfire, staring at the holographic projection of the human fleet. The odds were against them. The resistance was small, ill-prepared, and scattered across the galaxy. Humanity, on the other hand, was organized, powerful, and relentless. "The only way we win," Zara muttered to herself, "is if we turn the tide of fear into the tide of courage. If we fight smart, not hard." But her words felt hollow. Deep down, she knew that no matter how clever their strategies, no matter how many alliances they formed, the defenders would always be playing catch-up. Humanity had the upper hand in this war, and they knew it. The moment the battle began, the first thing Zara noticed was how fast humanity's fleets moved. The ships weren't just fast, they were like a swarm of predators, coordinated and deadly, always one step ahead. Every move they made seemed to anticipate her own. It was as if they knew exactly how she would respond before she even made a decision. And then, something unexpected happened. Humanity's ships, as formidable as they were, slowed. The speed, the power, everything stopped. For a brief moment, Zara thought they were pulling back, that the battle was over before it had even begun. But that wasn't it at all. From the center of the human fleet came a message. It's broadcast to every corner of the galaxy. Humanity does not fear resistance. We offer one final chance. Surrender or be erased. Zara's heart sank as she listened to the words echo across the battlefield. This wasn't just a war to humanity. This was an extinction event. They weren't just trying to conquer it, they were trying to erase. And now, with the resistance in their sights, humanity had given one final warning. The battle had begun in earnest. The fate of the galaxy rested on one last chance. Would the galaxy's last hope hold strong? Or would humanity crush them all under the weight of their unstoppable force? Asterisk, the final battle, the stars above the galactic capital were shrouded in a blanket of darkness, pierced only by the shimmering lights of countless warships preparing for the inevitable. The defenders of the stars had gathered their last remaining forces, rallying what little hope they had left. The human fleet had arrived, massive and unyielding, prepared to bring an end to any last remnants of resistance. There was no turning back now. Captain Zaravek stood before a holographic map of the battlefield, her fingers moving across the display with practiced precision. The Starfire was at the center of the Resistance's fleet, its hull scarred from previous skirmishes, but still strong. Beside her, her most trusted commanders, the best the galaxy had to offer, eddied their ships, their minds focused on the task ahead. Zara knew this would be their last stand. If they failed here, the galaxy would fall, as they awaited the first sign of humanity's attack. The question that haunted Zara's mind was clear. Why was humanity doing this? She had seen their power, their military might, but there was something more to it. Something beyond the war, beyond the conquest. Was this just about control, or was there something deeper, something personal driving them? We need to act fast, Zara said, her voice steady, but filled with resolve. Humanity isn't waiting for us to make a move. We must strike hard, disrupt their formation, and force them to react. Our best chance is a surprise attack. But even as she spoke, she knew the odds were stacked against them. The human fleet had already demonstrated its uncanny ability to anticipate every move, to predict their strategies with terrifying accuracy. Zara could feel the weight of the moment bearing down on her. If this was the last battle, it would define everything. Either they would stop humanity in its tracks, or they would watch as their galaxy was consumed by a force beyond their control. Suddenly, the quiet was shattered as a pulse of energy, brighter than a star, rippled through the darkness. The human fleet had begun its assault. From the front of the enemy formation, a massive ship emerged, the Eclipse. Its size was impossible to comprehend, dwarfing everything around it. The energy it radiated seemed to warp space itself, pulling the very fabric of the galaxy toward it. This was no ordinary ship. This was humanity's symbol of power. Its flagship, its statement to the universe that they would stop at nothing to dominate. Zara's heart pounded in her chest. She couldn't let fear take over, not now. She gave the order to engage, and the defenders' ships moved into position, forming an intricate web of firepower around the human fleet. The first wave of resistance ships launched their assault, sending volleys of laser fire toward the advancing human ships, but just as quickly as the attacks began, the human fleet responded. Each blast of energy was met with a counter, a perfect shield of light that blocked every shot. Humanity's ships moved with impossible speed, dodging and returning fire in an almost mechanical synchronization. The Resistance's forces were being torn apart, their attacks futile against the overwhelming might of the enemy. It's no use. One of Zara's commanders shouted, "We can't break through their defenses." Zara clenched her fists. "We need to push harder." Focus on their flagship. If we can cripple the eclipse, we might have a chance. The Resistance's ships turned their focus to the eclipse, unleashing every weapon they had. The eclipse responded in kind, firing blasts of energy that turned entire ships to dust. In the chaos, Zara caught a glimpse of something strange. There was a signal. A faint message pulsing through the space, too subtle to be detected by most, but too loud for Zara to ignore. Humanity does not conquer for power alone. The message echoed through her comes. An eerie, cold voice speaking directly to her. We conquer to save. Zara's mind reeled. Save. How could anyone think this was about saving? She had witnessed the destruction firsthand. What kind of twisted logic was this? Then it hit. Her humanity was not invading the galaxy for wealth, for dominion, or for pride. They had come because they believed the galaxy needed to be saved from itself. In their eyes, the galaxy's greatest flaw was its fragmentation, its endless cycles of war and greed. Humanity's brutal conquest was not just a power grab, it was an attempt to enforce order, to unite the galaxy under a single banner, to force peace upon those who refused to choose it. Her chest tightened. Humanity's vision of the future was one where they were the enforcers of peace, the architects of a united galaxy, no matter the cost. To them, the ends justified the means. The galaxy's will, its unwillingness to unite, was what had forced humanity's hand. But Zara knew that peace by force was no true peace at all. The galaxy couldn't be united through fear, through destruction. The fight wasn't just for survival anymore. It was for the soul of the galaxy itself. We cannot let them win. Zara whispered to herself, her voice filled with determination. We have to stop them. We have to show them that the galaxy is worth saving in its own terms. The final battle raged on, but now Zara and the Resistance fought for something greater than just victory. They fought to preserve the galaxy's freedom, to remind it that its diversity, its chaos, was what made it alive. Humanity may have the power to conquer, but the Resistance would show them that the galaxy's spirit was not theirs to control. As the Starfire charged into the heart of the human fleet, Zara Vek knew one thing for certain. This was the defining moment for the galaxy. Whether they won or lost, they would prove that the will of the stars could never be enslaved, that true peace could never be forced. The galaxy had its own destiny, and no one, not even humanity, could take that away. Asterisk.